Welcome again! This is the second part of my guide for blocking at Triple Trouble. With this video I will show you how you can block on Mesmer, either as Core Mesmer or Mirage. If you are looking for an introduction to blocking and general info, please refer to the first video, linked in the description along with the written guides. At this point, Mesmer can block all X, husks and AoEs quite easily, which makes it the best option for blocking. Just be aware that some of the info you find here can become outdated with patches. Your most used skills will be Feedback as Reflect and Distortion, the F4 skill, along with signets for invulnerability. Class mechanics. Distortion can make you invulnerable for up to 4 seconds. The duration depends on the number of clones you have. These will be shown as pink dots above your shatter skills. The base duration for using distortion without any clones is 1 second. Each clone adds another second. Let's have a look at the illusion mechanic, which is unique to Mesmer. There are 2 types of illusions, clones and phantasms. When you summon a phantasm, it will first perform a certain animation, then it turns into a clone. You also have skills that can spawn clones directly. Phantasms will not add up to your illusion count, only clones do. Core or Mirage. Go for Mirage if possible. You will be able to dodge and so evade attacks without moving. It also offers a good way to get clones. But don't worry, even without Mirage, you can block just fine on Core Mesmer. On Chrono, to mention the other elite specialization, you do not have access to Distortion, which does not make it impossible to block, but much more complicated. Build variations. You can take different approaches to block on Mesmer. In the following, I will present you 2 different ways to block, with slightly different builds for Core Mesmer and Mirage. In case you don't like one of the builds, you may want to try a different one. As a reminder, the worm can spit X every 40 seconds and husks every 80 to 90 seconds. You need a total of at least 3.5 seconds to block an entire spit. When you want to block all husks and X, you first get to the little issue that you only have 1 invulnerable skill that lasts long enough for an entire spit. You have F4 shatter, Distortion. On the double spits, so when the worm can possibly spit both, either X or husks, you need to start with invulnerability in case the worm spits husks first. But you also need to have invulnerability for the second spit, if the worm spits X first. So here are 2 options. 1. Double Distortion. With this variant, you use Distortion on the first of the 2 spits. Then you can reset its cooldown by activating the Signet of Illusions. This way you can use it again for the second spit. And option 2, Signet checking. For this, you will use the 1 second invulnerability from a signet, usually Signet of Midnight, to block the first part of a spit, so either the first single husk or the first 3x. The amount of invulnerable messages will tell you what the worm is spitting. If it's husks, you use the Distortion for the rest of the current spit, or if it's X, you use Feedback. Use the other skill to block the second spit. Which build is better? Personally, I prefer using the double Distortion variant to immediately get the full block duration needed. This will also save the signet for blocking AoEs. However, you will quickly need to regain 3 new clones for the second Distortion. Now let's have a look at the builds, including weapons, skills, traits, and how to block with them exactly. Both builds will have a lot of similarities. I will point out the differences. Weapons. For Mirage, I'd usually go with a main hand sword and a focus in one weapon set and an offhand sword in the other. If you do not have Mirage, you can replace the offhand sword with a torch for the double distortion build. Torch skill 4 will help you get enough clones instantly on core Mesmer. Sword 2 is an evade that can be used on the spin attacks. Sword 3 will give you a clone, and Focus 4 with trait can be used as reflect. Sword 4 offers another way to avoid spins. When you take a main hand sword on Mirage, you probably want to disable automatic attacks. This works by holding Control and right-clicking on your first skill. If you do not disable it, or if you press the skill by mistake, your character will jump after your dodges caused by the ambush attack. This means you would have to reposition yourself afterwards. Some people may prefer taking a scepter as main hand instead, or in the other weapon set. This will also give you a block for spins on skill 2, or if you double tap the skill, one clone. Additionally, you spawn clones on every third part of your auto attack. For Mirage builds, taking a staff or 2 for providing alacrity and might with your ambush skill, so your auto attack after dodging, is an option as well, although I'd only recommend this to more experienced blockers. Skills. Your healing skill will be the Signet of the Ether, which grants you 1 second of invulnerability after a 1 second cast delay. You do, however, need a trait for this invulnerability. Same goes for the Signet of Midnight, which does not have a cast delay. You will also have feedback, your main reflect skill, and the Signet of Illusions. This Signet is not used for the invulnerability you get, but for refreshing the cooldown on Distortion, to be able to use it twice on the double Distortion build. If you prefer the Signet check variant, you don't even need the skill. However, you can still use this or another Signet for extra AoE blocks or as a backup skill. Mind the different cast delays and cooldowns of the Signets. Another alternative for blocking X only is Mimic. This will allow you to use feedback twice. For this, you need to press Mimic before feedback. The most useful elite is Time Warp, that you can give quickness during the burn phase with. Alternatives are the Mirage skill Jaunt, which with trait creates illusions. It can be used if you have trouble getting illusions, but it is not needed. If you do decide to use Jaunt, use it right on yourself. You can have your mouse on the interface for that, else you will be teleported. Traits. The trait line you will always use for blocking is Inspiration. In there you take Blurred Inscriptions. Thanks to this trait, you will become invulnerable for a second after activating a Signet. This is required to be able to block with your healing Signet and the Signet of Midnight, or possibly any other Signets. Also, getting a clone with the activation of your Signet of Illusions comes in handy. Another trait in Inspiration that is worth mentioning is Warden's Feedback. You need this trait if you want to use your Focus 4 for blocking X. As a side note, you will not need Focus 4 for blocking with any of these builds, but it is nice to have as a backup. For Mirage builds, you will be using the trait line Mirage, obviously, and Dueling. Traits in the Mirage trait line do not matter as much. The big advantage here is being able to dodge without moving. Only if you want to use the Jaunt elite for gaining clones, you need to take the first trait, Self-Deception. but once again you have enough other ways to get illusions. The dueling trait line is taken for deceptive evasion, which makes you spawn a clone whenever you dodge, so it's perfect for Mirage. If you do not have Mirage, or if you want to block on core Mesmer, take the illusions trait line instead of dueling. Take the trait Escape Artist. This will let you gain a clone with your torch skill 4. Your third trait line is not as important on Mesmer. You can take Chaos for some stability or dueling for the dodge trait. Just be aware that you need to reposition yourself after dodging on core Mesmer. Blocking. Now let's look at how you combine your skills and traits to block with them. First, blocking all X and husks on the double distortion build. As soon as the fight starts and the worm spawns, move into the worm to find the right spot and create 3 clones. You can either spawn clones directly or use phantasm skills here, for example SWOT 5 or Focus 5. The very first time that the worm spits, or later when it can possibly spit X or husks, so when both cooldowns are ready, you will start with Distortion. Press it just when the worm is about to spit the first husks or X. It will block the entire spit. The invulnerable text will tell you what you have blocked. X if it's 3 messages per spit, husks if it's only 1 per spit. If the first spit was husks, you can simply use feedback for the X spit that will follow. If the first spit was X, however, you will need to use the Signet of Illusions to regain the cooldown of Distortion and get 3 clones back up quickly. The Signet will spawn 1 clone. On Mirage, you can get 1 or 2 other clones by dodging. SWOT 3 is another option. On core Mesmer, you can use Torch 4 as well, or the Mirage Elite Jaunt works too. As you see, you have enough ways to get clones. When the worm does the second spit, which will then be husks, use Distortion again to block the spit. After this double spit, husks will be on cooldown for a while. When the worm spits again, you can use feedback for X. Once you get to the point that the worm can spit both X and husks again, you will have Distortion and the Signet ready to follow the same steps as explained before. The Signet of Midnight and the Signet of the Ether can be used for blocking AoEs. You want to get the invulnerability from the Signet the moment the worm is about to make its head turn the other way. Midnight is the easiest to use as you become invulnerable immediately. The heal Signet has a little cast delay, so it needs to be activated earlier. Blocking with the Signet check build works a little differently. Let's also have a look at how you can block all X and husks on this build. Just like on the other build, you start by finding the right spot when the worm spawns and create 3 clones, either directly or with phantasm skills, like SWOT 5 or Focus 5. At the very start, or whenever the worm could possibly spit both X or husks, you use the Signet of Midnight to block the first part spit, so the first 3 X or the first husk. The healing Signet can do the same job, but it might be harder to time it and with that a bit more risky. If you see the invulnerable message 3 times, you have blocked the first X of this bit. Directly add feedback to block the remaining 2 parts bits. Or, if you see only one invul text, you have blocked the first husk. Directly use distortion to block the other 2 husks of this bit. For the second bit that will follow after, you will either have feedback for X when the first bit was husks, or you will have distortion for husks when the first bit was X. While husks are on cooldown, you can use feedback to block X. Don't forget to spawn new clones to have them ready for the next husks bit. Also on this build, you can use your signets to block AoEs, but keep your signet in midnight ready for when the worm can spit husks again. Cobalt beach spot start. There is a special case when you are blocking at cobalt and want to use the double distortion build. If the first kegs spawn at the beach and your squad is already stacking there, they may trigger the damage phase before the worm gets to spit the second time. So if you activate distortion on the first spit and it turns out to be X, then the burn phase starts. It is possible that eggs are ready again after the damage phase, but husks also will be ready, as the worm hasn't spit them yet. But you will not have distortion and the signet of illusions available, so you can only use distortion once. But you cannot know whether the first or the second spit after the burn phase will be husks. In this case, you can fall back to the signet checking method. So using the signet of midnight when the worm starts its first spit, then, depending on what it spits, seen by the invul messages, either add distortion for husks or feedback for X. The other skill can block the spit that follows after, feedback for X or distortion for husks. The next time you get the double spit, you can again use the double distortion variant. Another option is using the signet check method for the first single spit before the burn phase, so you will have double distortion available after the burn. Blocking X only. Sometimes you may only want to block X and possibly only 1 or 2 husks. This will be the case when there are Condi players who want to kill the husks. Before letting out any husks on purpose, you should always ask for confirmation from your commander. Do not just skip blocking because someone says they are Condi. To only block X, all you need are reflects. These would be feedback, possibly used twice with mimic, and temporal curtain, which is skill 4 on focus. You do not need to care about what the worm is spitting, but simply use 1 reflect skill on each spit. If you prefer using feedback only, use mimic before using the first feedback on the double spit. It can be helpful to keep track of the husk timer to know when you may need 2 feedbacks. You can also use distortion to block X, but you don't want to start with it to not block husks by mistake. You can tell what the worm spits by either not seeing anything fly, that means X, or eventually another player blocking husks, or you will see husks. For blocking 1 or 2 husks, you can activate distortion when the worm is about to spit the second or the third husk. And now that's all you need to know for blocking with Mesmer. You can use the timestamps in the description to go back to a certain point of this video, and also you can find the links to the other guides. If you have any open questions, please do not hesitate to ask them. Have fun!